Hey folks, let's learn something new about the oil and gas industry. So first thing is my apologies. We were very busy in 2019, plus I went through a bunch of personal stuff, so we did not put out much content at all. So my apologies to you, our audience out there. 2020, we're gonna hit it with a bang. You can see so much great content coming out, including this. This is the new MotoPoint Global Studio, and we're gonna give you a behind the scenes look in about a month from now on how we built this, the tools, the techniques, the cameras, the lightings you use, all that stuff. But this is the 2020 predictions, right? So let's just jump right into it. Number one, go big or go home. If you look what's happening in the shale plays, you see a lot of people out there saying the shale is just a bubble, it's going to burst. It's a whole bunch of capital inefficiencies by the operators, and basically shale is dying on its way out the door. We don't believe that whatsoever. We think something's going on in the maturity level of the shale plays. So if you look at what's happened in the last, say, 5 years, you see a lot of independent operators go in production, use that production numbers to borrow money, borrow CapEx, to drill more wells, to do more production. That's not a long-term business model. That's a short-term business model that, quite frankly, has failed. We all can agree upon that. What we see happening is something bigger and better, really, for the entire industry. We're seeing the major independents and the majors and the super majors come in, and a couple of things that are different about them in the shale plays. Number one, and we'll use Chevron as an example. Chevron owns the mineral rights in the Permian, right? In the shale plays. Almost all the independent operators lease them. Now that's a big difference that nobody ever thinks about. When you lease those mineral rights in those contracts is certain production goals, because the owner of the mineral rights wants to make money, wants to get paid, and they get paid on your production. So if you're an independent operator and you're leasing mineral rights, you are forced contractually to go in production. Chevron doesn't have to worry about that. Chevron can produce or not produce whether they want to or not, depending on what the market dictates, because they own the mineral rights. We think that's the trend of the future, and we're watching the other super majors buy mineral rights instead of leasing them, which verifies what we think. The other thing is, the majors don't have to borrow money. They don't have to borrow CapEx. They have their own funding internally. So you take those two simple things together. I don't need to borrow money because I have enough cash in my bank to do it myself, and the fact that I own the mineral rights. And those two things together give you, the major operators, anywhere from 50 cents to $3 a barrel more profit than the independent operators. We think that it's a sustainable business model. The mergers and acquisitions that are happening now proves that. We think that's where the future is going. So it's really good for everybody. It's going to be some turmoil, right? We're going to have some of the service companies surf a little bit as the prosperity from the independent operators gets transferred to the majors and the super majors. But once it gets settled and leveled out, we'll still be in this low crude price environment for almost forever. We'll get to that a little bit later. But now you have the majors who are much more efficient at running capital, much more efficient at running multiple large projects. And that's going to level everything out in the shale plays, we think. So go big or go home is number one. Number two, petrochemicals rule. If you look at 1/3 of the growth in hydrocarbon consumption, so not what the world is consuming now, but if you look toward the future, 1/3 of that future growth is pure petrochemicals. Petrochemicals makes modern life possible. Everything from the lipstick that your wife or girlfriend wears, to your soccer ball that you play with on afternoons with your kids, to the tires in your car, to the fuel of SpaceX, to the nylon that goes into the military protective vest, all that's petrochemicals. And the world wants more and more of that, and the world needs more and more of that. And so as an industry, we're providing more of the raw feedstock, which is crude oil and natural gas. Think of things like ethylene cracker. An ethylene cracker in simple forms converts natural gas to plastics. There's a proliferation globally, and here in the US, we have dominated petrochemicals. So number two, petrochemicals rule, which is really cool. Number three, hello agility. You heard me right, agility. So if you think about the oil and gas industry from its conception as an industry until now, it's always been in a resource constrained environment. Resources were hard to find. It was hard to find reservoirs. It was hard to find oil and natural gas. It was work, it was money. And so the old style of running that type of business lends itself very well to almost like a military operation, command and control. We're in that resource constrained world. Command and control works extremely well. Not picking on you, Exxon, I love you to death, but you're a perfect example of that command and control business model, right? Well, that's changed. Hydrocarbons are everywhere. This geology we have in the US, we keep calling shale geology. It's not just here in the US, it's all around the world. And as the world matures as far as infrastructure, roads and pipelines, the rest of the world will be able to tap into their shale plays. And even the best operator in the shale plays today in 2020 can only get maybe 15% of the hydrocarbons out the ground. At least 85% still there. So hydrocarbons are there forever, but the business has changed. We're no longer in a resource constrained world. So the old command and control business model, which served served our industry for so well for so long doesn't work. Now it's about being nimble. Who can be first to market? Who can be the first way to figure out a different way to finance a project? Who can be the first group to figure out different talent sources to tap into? So agility is what's going to make the differences between oil and gas companies that make it in the future and ones that disappear. Then, hydrocarbon pricing. We've been doing these yearly predictions for I think 6 years now, and every year people want me to give a number for what I think crude natural gas is going to be, and I never do it. Let's do it. What the hell, right? So we think in 2020 Brent is going to average $64 a barrel, and we think natural gas is going to average $2.55 per million BTU. Now my predictions on the price of crude is a little bit higher than a lot of the other analysts, and my predictions on natural gas is a little bit lower. Let's see what happens. Next, talent. As an industry, we are facing a talent shortage of epic proportions for the first time ever. People around the world don't want to come work in our industry. Up until just recently, if you were a young man or woman in Angola, Africa, your whole village would be super happy if you got a job in the oil and gas industry because it was prosperity and medical care and money and food, and everybody was super stoked about that. Folks, we have let it get to the point now where these young men and women in Africa or China or India don't want to come work in our industry because they think we're destroying the planet. As an industry, and whether it's upstream, midstream, downstream of service, we're an industry of engineers and project management. What happens when we can't hire engineers and project managers? This is real. This is serious. This is big. Now, Oil and Gas Global Network is working on something to help address this, but I need all of us to address this. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the predictions. But talent is a major constraint in our industry now. It's only going to get worse in the future. And you look at the type of talent we need. We now need data scientists. We now need data architects. We now need drone pilots. Those are the exact ones that don't want to come work here that the tech industry is going to be able to snag, right? And so talent's a major constraint. And whether you're a small oil and gas company or a mega oil and gas company, if you're able to figure out how to recruit and retain talent compared to your competitors, you go pull way ahead. And if you're those companies that don't want to change the way that you deal with your talent, you're going to get left behind. Sorry. Then, going green is picking up steam. So when all this first started, it was amazing to watch oil and gas companies dip their toe into the renewable world, right? The renewable market. It was really a PR stunt. Now, as an industry, we've looked at that and go, can we make money from clean energy? Can we make money from renewables? And there's also a bit of a disparity in between what happens here in Europe and the US and the rest of the world. We're actually spoiled by oil and gas here and in Europe. I mean, I live in a 3,000 square foot house. I probably burn 15 kilowatts of electricity a day. The only reason I can do that is because it's dirt cheap, and it's dirt cheap because of oil and gas. We have the ability to make electricity just almost free. The rest of the world isn't like that. So the rest of the world is coming out of an agrarian lifestyle, and they don't need 15 kilowatts. They need 1 or 2 watts, right? They need to be able to recharge a refrigerator, run a couple of light bulbs, and recharge an iPad. They don't need to run central heat and air like I do in my espresso machines, my 3 refrigerators. They don't need that. So renewable energy, solar is a great fit for that. You don't have to worry about infrastructure. You don't have to worry about pipelines. So the other thing is, if you look at CO2 emissions, the #1 way globally to lower CO2 emissions is for the world to switch from coal to natural gas. Guess who you get the natural gas from, folks? The oil and gas industry. So going green is no longer a PR stunt. It's now a revenue stream that we're all trying to figure out. The majors and the super majors especially have put a lot of money in research, which is great, into renewables, and we love that. We actually have an oil and gas renewable podcast coming out this year. Then, regional hydrocarbons. I know this is weird. Regional hydrocarbons. Have you ever wondered why, WTI right now is going for $57 a barrel here in Houston, same exact price in Tokyo, Japan, same exact price in Rio de Janeiro? You ever wonder why it could be the exact same price? It's because up until just recently, you could move those hydrocarbons, that crude natural gas, for almost nothing. We have a global network of super tankers and pipelines where it costs almost nothing to move it. So if you don't want to pay the list price today here, I can move it halfway across the world for nothing and sell it for that price over there. Interesting bit of trivia. At any one time in the oceans, there's more weight in crude oil being moved around than the weight of all the fish combined. That's how big this is. Well, for the first time in my lifetime, especially super tanker rates are going up, right? So it used to cost $2 million to move a super tanker from here to Asia Pacific is now up to $10 million. Well, that's now affecting that ability to move stuff for almost free. Now it's not almost free. So here in the US, we love heavy complex crudes, and we import those crudes from Canada, Venezuela, the Middle East. And then the rest of the world loves light sweet crudes, and so we export our crudes that we develop here to the rest of the world because we can do it for almost nothing. Well, what happens when that price of transport, those logistic prices go up, especially globally, right? Not pipelines, but super tankers, which is what's happening now. Now, all of a sudden, are we going to be more worried about regional hydrocarbons? Is the U.S. going to look at using its own production, its own light sweet crudes, and switch from using those heavy crudes from the rest of the world to our own light sweet crudes because the cost of transport's going up? Is the same thing happening in Europe, right? So regional hydrocarbons for the first time is going to be a major driver in 2020. We expect that trend to continue and actually get bigger and bigger. Then, and I really hope I'm wrong about this one, we think there's going to be a conflict in the Middle East. And when it happens, or if it happens, you're going to see a jump in prices, right? Which a lot of people are hoping happens. But that's going to be a temporary jump in prices. And the thing that's going to be different this time with the conflict in the Middle East is OPEC's going to implode a little bit, right? They're not going to be able to produce as much. And that's going to open up market share. For the first time, us and Russia will go after that OPEC market share and try to capture that. And when the war in the Middle East gets settled, they won't be able to come back and take back that market share. OPEC knows this. So OPEC is doing everything it can to keep a conflict from breaking out. But there's the perfect storm of what's going on with the Saudi Aramco IPO. You got Saudi Arabia paying for the overhead for having U.S. troops over there to protect everything. You know, everything that's going on in Iran, you know, and you had our embassy that was just attacked. So this is the perfect storm, and I am firmly convinced we're going to have a conflict in the Middle East. I don't want it to happen. I don't want anybody to get hurt. I don't want American boots on foreign soil. But we think it's going to happen in 2020. And you'll see that spike in hydrocarbon prices, and you'll see that the global shuffle for market share. And it's going to be an interesting time. If I am right, if we are right about the conflict, let's hope that it ends quickly so it doesn't get out of control. And then speaking of ending quickly and out of control, for the first time in the oil and gas industry, and for me personally, politics has to get personal. Folks, we're fighting a battle against organizations that don't like us for various reasons. Either they have financial gain or they're misinformed, but that battle is being fought right now. And if you're around during the 70s, the same thing happened with Greenpeace and the nuclear energy industry. Nuclear energy should be here. It's the safest way to generate electricity that we know of, but it's gone because of Greenpeace. Greenpeace used public perception and marketing to convince the world that nuclear was bad, that it was wrong, and they eliminate something that was vital to mankind. The same thing's going on with oil and gas. Now, in the case of oil and gas, no organization will ever make it go away completely because it's used for everything. But what will happen is it's going to increase our cost of doing business to the point that we may not be competitive with other energy sources. So for the first time ever, I've always said I want to stay out of politics in the public eye. I've wanted my company to stay out of politics in the public eye. That needs to change. You yourself, you and your company, I don't care if you work for a super major, needs to get involved in politics. But listen to me. You don't need to get involved in politics by giving money to trade organizations. The big Super Bowl ads that the API runs and you know, all the other full-page magazine ads and Wall Street journals, that does nothing with this new younger workforce. It needs to be real. It needs to have a big social media component, right? You look at the people that don't like us, they've used social media very well to shut down pipelines, to shut down access to drilling, to restrict water usage. We need to do the same thing, but we need to do it in a way where we're talking about the facts, the good things of our industry. A perfect example, I keep talking about ExxonMobil. Do you know ExxonMobil spends more money fighting malaria than anybody else in the world? Nobody knows that. Do you know that their new corporate headquarters outside of Spring, when they removed a lot of the trees for construction, they spent a ton of money, put those trees in cold storage, and paid tree experts to keep those trees alive for years. And when they finished their construction, they went back and replanted those trees. Nobody knows that story. That's the type of stuff we need to tell. But we need to tell it to our politicians, and our politicians need to understand the truth about our industry, how vital it is to mankind, how many jobs we support, and if they don't, we need to vote and get them out of office. So for the first time ever, Modal Point, Mark LACOUR, Oil and Gas Global Network are getting involved in politics in the public eye, and you need to too. We're in a battle, and that battle can only be won if we start influencing our politicians in a way that's transparent and honest, and it's based upon the facts. So politics gets personal. Then finally, for the first time, this is awesome, just new ways of working in the oil and gas industry. Part of it's being driven by this new workforce that's coming in. Part of it's also being driven by technology. You know, when I got started in business in the late 80s, you went to the office because that's where the data was you needed to do your job. There was no internet. There really was no email. We had a terminal and a mainframe computer, and we had internal email, but not external. And I got maybe 2 emails a week, right? all that's gone now. I no longer need to go to the office to access the file cabinets with the information I need, right? I can do it all on my phone. Same way with you. And for the first time ever, not only is the oil and gas industry recognizing that, and you're seeing work from home, you're seeing global positions where people are half around the world doing it, but you're also seeing stuff like measurement while drilling being done 100% remotely. You're seeing management of wells being 100% remotely. We got involved in this group called Top Coder, and we got involved with them through Anadarko. And what Top Coder is some of the best technology minds and workforce in the world in a community. It's a gig economy type thing, sort of like Uber, right? But what's so cool about it is that you can offer them a job if you need something done, which is what Anadarko did. And you get not only the top minds on the planet, but they work together. It's collaborative. So it ends up being cheaper and quicker for the customer, in this case, Anadarko. And then the people that work for Top Coder, they're writing the code, they're coming up with the technology, they're making 2 or 3 times as much as they would have worked for another company, and they can pick and choose their jobs. They can pick jobs they want to do, and they don't have to pick the jobs they don't want to do. So you look at it that way, there's entirely new ways of working. It's changing the actual culture of oil and gas. I suspect in my lifetime that subsea engineers will spend part of the time working on a bunch of trees for Shell, and then the other half of the day working on a bunch of trees for Chevron and working on a bunch of trees for Petrobras, right? We don't do that now, but it's coming. That's going to drive efficiencies and employee satisfaction in a way that we've never done before. So that new ways of working is number 10 of our predictions in oil and gas for 2020. So hopefully this was useful to you. Hopefully this has helped. We will see you next time.